Inside Utah Politics.
Time now for a closer look at some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Senator Derek Kitchen and State Representative Candace Perucci. Really glad to have both of you on the show. Thanks so much for being here. Let's start off with the Inflation Reduction Act. First off, just your assessment of the bill. Representative, let's start with you.
Well, I think the title is a little bit disingenuous on this bill to call it the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, when you look at what this bill does, it's going to do anything but reduce inflation. It increases taxes by raising corporate taxes. It increases spending. It hires more IRS agents. Generally speaking, all three of those things don't typically reduce inflation, especially as we're at the beginning of a recession. And yes, it is a recession. We have had 2 quarters of a fall in GDP growth. And so I think this bill, well, there were a lot of policies that they attempted to address in there. It is not honest to call it the Inflation Reduction Act, and I think they could have done a much better job, but that's how they're messaging it now. And what I really think we need at the federal level is we need to be controlling and stopping out of control government spending. We need to be focusing on our energy independence to bring down those gas prices and tax cuts to provide relief for families and individuals in our country, and this bill does the opposite of that.
Senator, your thoughts on the bill as it passed?
You know, I'm really proud of the congressional Democrats. I mean, Americans are hungry for their federal government to take action on inflation, and that's exactly what they're doing with the Inflation Reduction Act. So I'm really proud of Democrats. Obviously, you know, this is the most significant drawdown on our federal deficit in almost a decade. This will directly impact the quality of life for Utahns and Americans all over the country, especially when it comes to our medication, the way that we engage with our economy, the opportunity to make meaningful investments in addressing climate change. I mean, if we're talking about security for American people, at the end of the day, there's nothing more important than getting our hands around climate change. And so, honestly, I'm really proud of Democrats. Americans have been hungry for leadership in Washington for a long time. And so exactly what we've gotten out of Biden and the congressional Democrats is action, so I'm proud of them.
Representative, you talk about some of the policy in this bill. How would you like to see that addressed if this isn't the way to do it?
So again, we can have a separate discussion on prescription drug pricing. I'm the Vice Chair of Health and Human Services. We have a lot of discussions around this policy issue. We can talk about climate change and how that can be addressed, but neither of those policies reduces inflation. And that is how this bill is being messaged. The massive increase in IRS employees that are being hired on for this, for an incredibly complex tax code, is going to put a crunch again on middle-class America. So I honestly don't think any of this would have been if I were to say an Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of that would have come to reducing taxes, again, stopping government spending, and reducing our debt, obviously. But I just think this is the wrong approach. And I will also say this: President Biden ran as a middle-of-the-road, moderate to the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. And as president, he has done just the opposite with extreme left, aggressive policies, which you're seeing in the outcomes of the votes. Not one Republican was able to vote for this bill because there was no effort to make it bipartisan.
Senator, a couple of things. First off, this is the debate that we're seeing play out on this from both sides. You say it will reduce inflation. How so?
Well, we're drawing down the federal deficit. Like I said, this is the most significant payment toward the federal deficit in nearly a decade, since the last time we had a Democrat in office, Barack Obama. So that is going to have a significant impact there. You got to keep in mind, in July, you know, we had inflation growth at 0%. We had just 67 days as of today of continued reduction in gas prices in the United States. And so the country is on the right track. And the fact that Democrats in Congress are taking meaningful action that will take long-term investments in climate change and energy independence, and the opportunity to make sure that American families have a fair shake when it comes to Medicare negotiating drug prices. There's real opportunity in this legislation. I'm so proud of Democrats for taking action. Of course, it's not done yet, but we have been negotiating this back and forth for months, and it's about time that something is done.
A poll out this week by ABC News shows that 2/3 of the country still believes the economy is on the wrong track. Here in Utah, I know both of you would tell me that families within your district are feeling the effects of high gas prices and high prices at the grocery store. On a local level, What needs to be done and what is being done to address that? Representative.
So just to set the table here, I completely agree, Glenn. I have the second youngest district in the state, and quite frankly, the prices right now are unsustainable for families. The senator mentioned that gas prices are coming down. Thank heavens they are at record high, and they still are at record high, and they could be much lower if this administration would take advantage of more of an energy independent focus in their policies. Utah families right now are paying anywhere to an extra $700 to $900 a month for an elderly couple on a fixed income. For a young family, that is unsustainable. We have a lot of people are starting to tap into their credit cards to just buy groceries and gas, and we can't have that. So you ask, what can we do at the state level? Obviously, there's the overarching federal policy that we're operating under, and what they do does have economic impacts in our state. But what we can do at the state level, and some of the things we're talking about, and I have a bill right now that would actually lower the income tax rate and do a one-time income tax credit. We are going to have about a $1.3 billion one-time surplus coming in, and we need to do as much as we can to get people's hard-earned money back into their wallets. So that's one option. Another thing we're looking at is over 90 entities are proposing tax increases. I mean, that goes from your counties to your school districts. And right now, tax increases on people are not an option, especially individuals who are on a fixed income who bought their home 30 years ago and now are facing having to move because of their property taxes. So another idea is a property tax deferral, what would allow a certain group of incomes who live on a fixed income and a certain income level that they would be able to defer property tax increases until they sold that property. So that's an option to provide relief. Obviously, continuing to be a great state for people to do business, for small businesses to thrive. We really just want to get government out of people's lives so they can thrive and live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, make sure to sit down when you open up your property tax statement this year, if you haven't already done that. Senator, the local level, you and your colleagues, what can and needs to be done to help address this issue in our state?
Well, that's right. Young people, working families, retirees, everybody is feeling the impact right now, especially of high gas prices and the increased costs at the grocery store. I would invite my Republican colleagues to join Democrats in eliminating the tax on groceries. Honestly, Utah is one of only 13 states that still has this. This directly impacts people who are living paycheck to paycheck. As a young person myself, 33 years old, a little bit older than Representative Perucci over here, we know what it's like to experience the living from paycheck to paycheck, week to week, not being able to pay childcare, not being able to pay that $200 a month increase in our rent. These are real life impacts that we are experiencing right now. And so anything the state can do, obviously eliminating that extra cost at the grocery store, I think that's critical. I think encouraging people to continue to work from home and to take mass transit. I would support, obviously making transit free in our community, not only because it would allow us to get around at a cheaper cost, but it would have a meaningful impact in our air quality. I'm really interested in the opportunity for a property tax deferral, but again, that's just a deferral. So you will still be paying that on the back end. So at the end of the day, we have a few levers here and there, but we really need to be taking action that impacts people's quality of life and their access to buy goods and services right now. And the best way to do that is to eliminate the tax on our grocery store products.
Okay, we have about a minute left, so I'll give each of you 30 seconds, but I want to hit on one last topic. It was a big one during the week. An unprecedented FBI raid we saw play out at one of former President Trump's properties. Former Vice President Mike Pence saying that action undermines public confidence in our justice system. Chris Christie, a former Republican governor of New Jersey, calling it fair game. Representative, your thoughts?
So obviously, I have not read the warrant, nor has the rest of America. I think it would be helpful for the Attorney General and FBI Director to disclose that information with the American public. I agree that this is unprecedented. Of course, no one is above the law, but I agree with Lindsey Graham when he said the law should be above politics, and this feels very political right now. So I think, of course, we need to continue following this and monitoring this situation. But absolutely, I think that a statement, the public deserves at least a statement with an explanation on this. Obviously, a raid on a very high-profile individual and potential candidate has a lot of different implications.
All right, Senator, the final 30 seconds are yours.
You know, this is certainly a development in the Trump saga that will rock the history books. I mean, obviously, you know, if the FBI is coming after you in your own home, in your residence, the FBI director that you yourself appointed, then you should be shaking in your boots, and I'm speaking about President Trump. At the end of the day, if you violate the law, if you take classified information outside of the White House when your term ends, we need to make sure as the American public that we are safe and secure and that that has not fallen into the hands of foreign adversaries. And so I think that there's real concern that Trump has violated the law. And so I'm eager to see what the final story is here. Obviously, it's still developing, but this is certainly one for the history books. One
we will keep our eyes on. I really appreciate having both of you here. Excellent conversation, and appreciate your insight. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us, Glenn.
Stay with us.